Our Creator, the Creator, there's only one. His DNA is found throughout all of creation. The synchronicities that are found through from a seashell to sound waves is his fingerprint, and it all points back to a single origin of genius. Beyond the genius is love. His love is all consuming, all enduring, all possessive, all forgiving, all encompassing, and beyond our comprehension. Because we've only experienced the imperfect love of humans. Even in the best of intentions, human love often comes with shortcomings, misunderstandings, and when our human love isn't protected by the bond of covenant of the Creator, and even when it is, it can be attacked and infiltrated by seeds of darkness that contaminate, pollute, and destroy through poisoning what is supposed to be a good and perfect love. And those seeds of poison, they're dressed up like shame and guilt and distrust in good and hopelessness and condemnation. And our Creator, He's not mad at you. He's not ashamed of you. He's not disappointed in you. Our Creator has this ability to understand how it is that we've become who we are, how it is that we've resulted in the outcomes that we've resulted in. He understands the pieces of our love tool belt that were not given to us from our lineage, that should have been passed to us from loving parents. He understands that there are simply assaults that have come through our lineage that have been passed from generation to generation, broken mindsets that have been passed down from generation to generation, toxic fear of the other, guilt, shame, and an obligation to have everything together and to know all the answers. He understands how we get to a space where we ignore Him because we're afraid that He's mad at us, or that we ignore Him because we're so disappointed about how something worked out and we can't understand how He could let that be so. But the fact of the matter is that only in the space of residing in His abundant presence will we ever find the peace, hope, and solutions and answers that we seek. The peace that we need, the spiritual medicine that we need, resides in His presence. It resides in who He is. It resides in the purity of who He is. And if He ever thought, if there was ever something that you could have, it's so funny because I found in my own life, if I ever think that I didn't learn a lesson and I repeated a mistake, I become so down on myself. And I'm sure that I've done it once and for all, but yet I can, out of my mouth, convey the love of God to other people and tell you that there's nothing you could do. I can quote scripture that says there's no height, there's no depth that could ever separate us from the love of God. And so we must take hold of every thought, and we must take hold of every accusation, and we also must take hold of our own posture and understand how we're operating and why we're operating that way, and what is the underlying narrative that is leading us to operate in such a way. He wants you to know he's not mad at you. He's not disappointed in you. He knew. He even knows the mistakes that you will still make. He knows your future mistakes. And he covered you. He covered you because he wants to. He wants to. Whom the Son sets free is free indeed. So when we choose to align with the supernatural adoption, opting back into our Creator as him being our Father. And it's so beautiful because he doesn't force himself on us. He is such a gentleman. He is our one true Father, and he waits and woos us very subtly and quietly and patiently. And he will wait for you to choose him proactively, intentionally, with love, with your love, because you want to. The thing that we must all realize is that this life that we're in right now is like, it's like, oh gosh, how do we explain this? It's like it's the determining period. It's where you get to choose. This is your time of free will. And there is another option. There had to be another option, because if there wasn't another option, then it would be a dictatorship. I think of some people's experiences in polygamy, and there's this like, you have to buy your way in to the family, even though they created you, and you have to live by their rules if you want to stay. And if you don't live by their rules, you can't stay. And if you don't live by their rules and stay, then you're ejected forever and denied, and you are quickly dropped. And that is so not our God. He is constantly in full pursuit of us. And yet we must be very aware of the time that should we choose to reject him, there's not another, as far as I know, there's not another lifetime in which you get to choose him again. Like, this is it. And there is an enemy that is this egotistical maniac who wants souls in his hell for the wrong reasons that God wants souls in his heaven. Our Abba Creator created us to live here in abundance, in joy and peace and freedom and liberation, not as slaves, not as objectified pieces to be a cog in a machine, to push a line or to push an ego. Our God is the King of the universe, and yet he is so patient and gentle, and he will never be the dictator in your life that is that loud, bossy voice. He is the gentle, soft whisper in the wind that is just wooing you and loving you. And he will win us over by his love, and he has won me over by his love. And he wants you to know he's not mad at you. And he wants you to know that he is always talking to you and always here for you. And there are times where you can't produce, and there are times where you can't show up and be the Christian that, looks good on paper. And there are times when your body fails, and there are times when your mind fails, and there are times when your heart fails. And as long as we allow him to keep accessing us, he has solutions for all those things. He's not worried about our performance. He's worried about our heart being perfectly set on him in purity and in love. And purity isn't just mean don't have sex. Purity means is your atmosphere being contaminated by the lies of this world. The lies of this world will lead us to do things that don't help us, that don't serve us. And those things we do want to pay attention to, but religion has done a really bad job of figuring out how to address this problem. Religion has just pointed at the outcomes and said, ew, you're bad and you're wrong, and this is, not of God. And they have no idea how to explain what they're talking about. And so if you don't have the ability to explain what that means, then you shouldn't be pointing out at things at people anyway. Our God desires us to have a life where we feel secure and stable and safe, and that our sexual encounters don't create disease that's going to harm us and other people. Our God doesn't want us to be bossed around by our bodies. There was a time where I literally my body would tell me what was up, about what my needs were. And I'm not talking about just food and water. And I remember being like, is this addiction? Because why is my flesh, this is what it's called in the word, my flesh, why is my flesh bossing me around? Why, and we call it freedom now. We call it liberty, to be able to go and have sex with whoever you want. And, we say don't disrespect one another. We can all do whatever we want with our bodies. But the reality of it was when I had to find somebody to hook up with because that's what my body was demanding, I no longer felt like that was freedom. I felt like that was being out of control of my own self. And then there's this weird thing where it's but then when when your body gets that thing that it wants, then you feel satisfied. But see, that's a false satisfaction, because it's ultimately your body is being controlled by a toxin that's not of purity. And I don't think that we talk about this enough. I didn't know there was another way. I didn't know that there could be a different way. I didn't know how to resolve or how to fix it. I was Googling addiction, because I didn't know how to fix it. And so I'll tell you what the solution is. The solution is opening up the door to Creator and saying, I want you to be my God. I want you to rule this life. I humble myself before you. I would kneel on my hands and knees in my own house, not just when other people did it at church, or not just, I don't know, I feel I don't think I've seen people kneel unless they were in a ritual, celebrating Islam, prayer. We shouldn't be doing things just for ritual. We should be doing things because they are inspired in our heart posture. And humbly come before the Creator, God Himself, and say, I want what you have for me. And He will handle situations one thing at a time. He's not in a hurry. If He wanted to do it all at once, He would do it all at once. There are some times where, for me, another thing I dealt with was physical pain that really affected my life and my ability to perform in the rat race, pretty much. And I felt like such a failure. I felt like my identity had been assaulted. I was boss babe, the boss babe. I could work. I moved around the country. I invented my life wherever I wanted to. And then as my body became debilitated by chronic pain, I completely melted away. And as I'm being passed by pretty much by family, ignored, unseen, undervalued, because now I couldn't be the trophy that I once was. And I just fell into the arms of my Creator, and I believed that He had the capacity to heal me on His timeline, in His way. And He did. And He could have healed me overnight, and that would have been such a beautiful, cool, magic trick kind of miracle. But instead, He spent the time. He said, watch this. I'm going to let you rest while you deal with this. I'm going to give you the perfect amount of work in the perfect kind of way. I'm going to allow you to heal slowly, and I'm going to bring you solutions. And I'm going to spend the time with you while you're down. And we're going to make love together while you're down. And we're going to... And we just would worship. I would worship, and we would abide together. And instead of Him just permanently, quickly healing me so that I could get back into the rat race and go perform for the people, instead he and I went on this love adventure that was the road less traveled, and he loved me while I was down. And that's where he spoke to me. His words of how proud he was of me, how much he loved me, how he wasn't mad at me, how nothing could separate me from his love. And as I did my best to love others during this time and yet also maintain boundaries and realize that it wasn't my responsibility to be the little trophy poster child, that this season, this revelation of what it meant to be his daughter changed everything. So much of religion is just another version of fear of man, which means where we live to impress people. And I quickly realized it's not the thing, and it's not how I'm going to live ever again. And he's done nothing but increase me. He's done nothing but increase me. And he is worthy, and he is loving, and he's not mad. And I am grateful.